What the United States did yesterday should have been done long ago. A lot of lives would have been saved. Just recently, Soleimani led the brutal repression of protesters in Iran, where more than 1,000 innocent civilians were tortured and killed by their own government. We took action last night to stop a war. We did not take action to start a war. I have deep respect for the Iranian people. They are a remarkable people with an incredible heritage and unlimited potential. We do not seek regime change. However, the Iranian regime's aggression in the region, including the use of proxy fighters to destabilize its neighbors, must end, and it must end now.
یاران همه رفتند، افسوس که جا مانده منم. حسرتا این گل خارا همه جا رانده منم. پیر ره آمد و طریق رفتن آموخت. آن که نارفته و جا مانده منم.
Well, I think it's hard to overstate the potential impact of this moment. He was a much more powerful figure, actually, than Osama bin Laden or Baghdadi were at the moment of their own deaths. Their power was in decline. His was growing, as it has been really since the US invasion of Iraq. To his own side, he was an invincible folk hero, Robin Hood with RPGs, and they are anguished. And to his opponents, including, of course, the UK, he was a sort of mastermind Bond villain, and he'd been behind huge suffering and sectarianism and death and destruction across the region.
Did you ever think that the United States would be willing to take this ultimate step in assassinating him?
Well, generally in the Middle East, it's best to focus on putting out fires rather than starting them. But Iran had, with the attacks in September on the Saudi oil facilities, with the attacks in the last week against the US embassy in Baghdad, had been goading Washington, had been goading Donald Trump. And of course, we don't just have erratic leaders at the moment in Tehran, we have an erratic leader in Washington as well.
And indeed, in terms of goading, just the other day, the Supreme Leader, Khamenei, said to President Trump directly on Twitter, this is the situation, you can't do anything about it, which of course turned out to be wrong. He could and did.
Absolutely. And now what unites the region at the moment is not just the shock at what's happened overnight, but actually now the fear of when and where and how Iran itself will retaliate. And the strategic response, if they're feeling rational, is probably to consolidate their position in Iraq. But elsewhere, they have many more dangerous options, including assassinations themselves or proxy wars or asymmetric attacks like the one against their Saudi oil facilities.
Yeah.
Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel Breaking News TV. We are here again with another breaking news.
Brett, what have you learned about what intelligence officials and diplomats overseas are saying led up to this strike?
Dana, good afternoon. I've talked to a couple of U.S. officials and a couple of senior diplomats in the region who said much like, but in different terms, Secretary of State Pompeo said that this was response to what was forming into an imminent threat, an imminent attack that Soleimani was believed to be behind. This meeting was at the Baghdad airport and had several top officials, including Soleimani and the head of the Iraqi Shia militia and a big figure in Hezbollah in the region. One source telling us that Soleimani had flown back into Baghdad from Beirut and they were doing planning for what was described as a big attack that was, again, in the words of these officials, imminent. One official saying it was like the Legion of Doom was meeting there at the Baghdad airport, and they had real-time intelligence that it was happening, good eyes on, and knew where it was happening, and that's what led to the attack and this urgent action, according to these officials.
But this is not the first that Soleimani has been on the administration's radar, am I right?
No. In fact, for years, I've covered him for years. He was essentially the Wizard of Oz of Iranian terrorist attacks. He had his fingers in a lot of things across the world, really, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and even in Afghanistan, India. I asked Secretary of State Pompeo about him specifically back in an interview in April. Take a listen. So we, as a country, have a policy to target him or capture him.
Qasem Soleimani has the blood of Americans on his hands, Brett, as does the force that he leads. And America is determined each time we find an organization, institution, or an individual that has taken the lives of Americans. It is our responsibility. It's indeed President Trump's duty, and we have made tremendous progress in this administration's first 2 years to reduce the risk that any American will be killed by Qasem Soleimani and his Mary Brandon brothers ever again.
So U.S. officials saying they've had this effort to go after him for a while. Now, there was a time when Soleimani and others with the Iranians were working with the U.S. against ISIS,
right.
But officials are saying that that was a kind of a collaboration of the moment and that he was a very bad guy for the region.
What can you tell us about what possible countermeasures that Iran could take? If you know, obviously we know the cyber attacks one, and as I understand, the U.S. government is actually pretty well prepared to deal with those, but it's U.S. corporations that actually might be at more risk.
In part because of what hasn't happened on Capitol Hill with legislation that has not gotten through, enabling corporations to get all that they possibly need from the government on protecting them from cyber attacks. But there's a big menu for Iran. The easiest is attacks in Iraq, American interest or Americans in the region. They have a lot of, as I mentioned, fingers through Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations. There are even, the FBI has been tracking cells inside the U.S. of Hezbollah. So there are some thoughts about sleeper cell possibilities, and expect that to be, you know, something that shoring up against some potential attack is going to happen in coming days.
Well, Brett Baer, it's so good to have you on the show today, and no doubt Special Report tonight is going to be must-see television. I'll be there as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.
Breaking news from the Middle East, where a U.S. drone strike killed one of Iran's most powerful military leaders overnight. The targeted killing of Major General Qasem Soleimani inside Iraq is a dramatic escalation in the confrontation between the U.S. and Iran. Video, apparently from the aftermath, shows burning wreckage near Baghdad's airport. Soleimani led the powerful Quds force of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, blamed for killing hundreds of American troops.
Tammy, why do some media outlets insist on lionizing these terrorists? What's the motivation?
One of my favorites, by the way, is The New Yorker. Soleimani, a flamboyant former construction worker, and bodybuilder with snowy white hair, a dapper beard, and arching salt and pepper eyebrows, which I will have, hopefully, you know, in maybe another 30 years. They're doing it because, and this is a knee-jerk reaction now, they've been trained, it's automatic, it's instinct, because this is a good thing that President Trump did. They cannot accept that something that would actually, in just the basic facts of reality, cast a good light on the president. So their instinct, like with al-Baghdadi, is to try to cast these individuals as these were like nice guys, or maybe didn't deserve this, and Trump's a maniac, and you don't love him for this because this was wrong. They are so engaged in this delusion that it's affecting their ability even to relate basic figures and facts when it comes to reality. In fact, then it becomes a lie. It becomes a perpetual lie to the American people.
But it's repeated and repeated and repeated. Matt Schlapp, how did this guy become the Mr. Rogers of Tehran? I mean, what is happening here?
Yeah, well, I think Tammy's right that he is now a foil to Donald Trump. But I think it's important to put this in perspective. Remember, under the Bush years, when we went after terrorists, in many cases, we would arrest them and send them to Gitmo. But according to the left, that was abusive of their human rights. Right. So what did Obama do to enhance the human rights of terrorists? He started to assassinate them. I never read very many op-eds about it was a problem when thousands of terrorists were taken out with drones by President Obama. But here, President Trump has the audacity, after actionable intelligence that he was going to go after innocents with a new attack, takes the man out. Now we have to read all this about it being unconstitutional, an abridgment of human rights internationally. Barf, Raymond, barf.
Tammy and Matt, I want you to listen to how CNN's John Berman described the killing of terrorist Soleimani.
That's nothing compared to the murder of General Soleimani, and this comes during the Senate impeachment trials.
Murder is unlawful, unjustified killing, okay, of a person.
That's correct.
As if we didn't have the right.
It's a legal finding. Yeah.
But he seems to be indicating here that the president doesn't have a right to remove a person who's orchestrated hundreds, if not thousands, of American deaths.
All of the effort on the left, including the impeachment, is to try to make President Trump illegitimate. Their argument is that effectively he shouldn't be able to operate, he shouldn't be allowed to operate, he shouldn't choose Supreme Court justices, he shouldn't act as the president. But this is not going to bode well for them next year. The American people understand what's happening. They can make up their minds about who's dangerous. It's their family that are in the military. These were specialized strikes. No civilians were injured. We're going to manage this. Remember, he was attacked for removing our troops from the border of Syria because that was abandoning our allies. There's nothing this man can do that will be approved of, and the American people see this, I believe, for what it is.
Matt Schlapp, you heard earlier, there are some concerns, even among congressional Republicans, that we may be entering another endless war or quagmire here. But I want to contrast the hand-wringing and the depiction of Trump's order to take out Soleimani with the way the media reacted to Osama bin Laden's death during the Obama administration. Listen.
President Obama will be remembered as the leader who nailed bin Laden.
And it could be the defining moment of Barack Obama's presidency.
President Obama's talk about unity does reflect a real, palpable feeling in a lot of the country.
It was breathtaking and the moment of Barack Obama's presidency so far.
I haven't heard any of this breathless commentary since Trump removed these terrorists. Matt, are terrorists only worth removing if a Democratic president does it?
Look, it's a pretty scary thing, which is there was a time in this country where there was a national security consensus, be you liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. When it came to our national security, we could stand together. I applauded Barack Obama when he took out Osama bin Laden. I'm disgusted that these Democrats who want to be the commander-in-chief and want to replace Donald Trump can't even stand up for the security of the American people and our allies. And remember, we've been at war with Iran for 40 years. We've never recognized this regime. This is not a state that's recognized by the American government. They are as rogue as Al-Qaeda is rogue. And if it's okay to take out Osama bin Laden, it should be able to take out a terrorist like Soleimani.
And can I add, the part of the media complaint is that, this is going to be perpetual war. And even the complaints of some people in Congress. We were told it was going to take 30 years to get rid of ISIS. It took 18 freaking months. Donald Trump does not do perpetual anything. He's a businessman. There are endpoints. The faster you get something built, the faster you do something, the better for the overall picture of what you're achieving. This is about getting things done. And finally, we have an man of action in the White House.
Before I run out of time, I want both of you to react to this. Fox News' Peter Doocy today asked Joe Biden if he'd greenlight an airstrike to save American lives. Listen.
If you were ever handed a piece of intelligence that said you can stop an imminent attack on Americans, but you have to use an airstrike to take out a terror leader, would you pull the trigger?
Well, we did. The guy's name was Osama bin Laden.
And didn't you tell President Obama not to go after bin Laden that day?
I didn't.
No, I didn't. Now, Uncle Joe must be having a senior moment because that's not exactly what he told Obama. Here's Joe Biden from 2012.
Mr. President, my suggestion is don't go. We have to do 2 more things to see if he's there.
Matt, is it any wonder that Bob Gates said Biden was wrong about every foreign policy issue over the last 4 decades? What's going on here?
I'm having a flashback to another Democratic presidential candidate. I think Joe Biden was against the assassination of Osama bin Laden before he was for it.
Tammy?
Yeah, look, this is, I think, this is why primaries are important, campaigns are important, people being in front of the camera, being asked questions, hard questions, which falls always to Peter Doocy, apparently, which is great for us. But it really shows you the nature of what politicians have gotten used to doing, lying. And making things up as they go along. We're in an age now, technological age, where we can immediately remind people about what was really said. That's a benefit for the country. And these are the kinds of things that will make his candidacy, of course, and they have a problem.
Tammy Bruce, Matt Schlapp, thank you both for being here.
Don't forget to like our video and subscribe for our channel.